update number 11 was released today, bringing us to version 1.29.28.0. The release notes are linked in the description. This update is part of the 40th anniversary update for the sim. As a caveat here, I just want to say that everybody's system is different and your results may not match mine. Prior to getting the update, I ensured my community folder was empty and my system was fully up to date with the Windows updates, and the store application was checked for updates as well. The Windows update took about 2 hours to do.
One eternity later.
At 8 a.m. Pacific Standard Time, I launched Microsoft Flight Simulator and I got a small 1 GB patch for the application. After it loaded up fully, the sim began to load and I got a notification for another update. The sim's second update was a 41.69 GB patch. It took about 35 minutes to do the patch. While the sim updated, I checked the release notes. I'm sure you're all aware that they added 12 new free aircraft to the sim. That's so awesome. I love that they did that. They also restored Meigs Field in Chicago, which has been closed down since 2003. It's nice that they restored it, since starting with version 2 of the sim, all flights originated there by default. Version 1 of the sim didn't have any named airports, and you just flew one plane, a World War I Sopwith Camel. After version 2 and the addition of Meigs Field, the Cessna 182 became the default aircraft. The reason that this airfield was used as a default was because Bruce Artwick, the original author of Flight Simulator, got his private pilot's license at that airport, and he flew in and out of it quite often. When the patch completed, the sim just continued to load as normal. Following this, I went into the training area and noted the addition of glider training. Good thing is I don't know jack about gliders other than some basic theory. I checked the marketplace and grabbed a couple of free items that had shown up in there, namely the Airbus A310-300 and the Douglas DC-3. There's a ton of stuff on steep discount in the marketplace right now, so you might want to check that out. I took a look at options to make sure my settings were intact, and indeed they were. Then on to the aircraft selection screen to see what was new there. The Airbus A310-300 is supposed to be a study-level aircraft. I rarely fly liners, so I'll defer to you folks out there that do to make that final judgment on that claim. They also added a couple of choppers. This is the Bell 407 chopper. I see these used a lot for commuting and sightseeing. I have no clue how to fly a chopper, so that'll have to wait for me. They added the Curtiss JN4 Jenny biplane from World War I, a range of 135 nautical miles and a cruising speed of 55 knots true airspeed. Yeah, baby. It has a choice of 3 liveries. Here are our 2 new gliders, the DG Aviation DG-101E Neo and the LS-8-18. Next is the Douglas DC-3. They have a ton of liveries for it as well. I love that. Following that, we have the little Guimbal Cabri G2 chopper and the Grumman G-21A Goose amphibious aircraft. It looks a bit like Scully's plane in the video game Uncharted. This is followed by Howard Hughes' Spruce Goose aircraft. I don't think it has landing gear, so you'll be restricted to only aquatic takeoffs and landings. No liveries for that bad boy, though. Moving on, we have the Ryan Airlines of San Diego, California's Spirit of St. Louis. It was flown by Charles Lindbergh on May 20th, 1927 from Roosevelt Field in New York and landed about 33 hours later at Aéroport Le Bourget in Paris, France. I hope I pronounced that right. It was a distance of about 3,600 miles and was acclaimed as the first aeronautical transatlantic crossing. You can choose from the original 1927 livery or the 1928 updated one. Our penultimate addition here is a de Havilland DHC-2 Beaver. It's a high-wing, short takeoff and landing bush plane that was produced by de Havilland Canada from 1947 to 1967. They made about 1,650 of them. And finally, we have the Wright Flyer. With a cruising speed of 23 knots true airspeed, a ceiling of 20 feet, you're not going to get far in it with its 1 nautical mile range, and it sports no liveries. I tested frames per second around the Kilo Victor November Yankee Airport in Los Angeles, where I've tested it before. I used the built-in game bar tool in Windows to display the current FPS in the upper right corner of the screen. The FPS was about the same as my previous experience, but this time it was locked at 30 FPS. No deviation from 30 FPS at any time, and the flight was just as smooth as silk. No chugging, no jitter, nothing. I also checked the clear sky setting since that was updated, and indeed, not a cloud in the sky. Excellent. Okay, I thought we'd take a closer look at the aircraft that were added, starting with the Jenny at Meigs Field in Chicago. The cockpit of the Jenny is very sparse, as you can see. Just a few gauges and a stick. You won't have any trim or flaps here. Meigs Field looks very nice here, and so does the Jenny in flight. It's pretty sluggish and slow to respond to control inputs as expected. Let's have a look at the Airbus A310-300 cockpit. The cockpit looks great, very detailed. And they even have iPads, and they even work. How cool is that? Well, they said it was a study-level aircraft, so I guess that makes sense. We have yokes instead of a side stick like the 320. Looking around the cabin, I see no door to get in or out, so make sure you empty your bladder before you fly with this. The Bell 407 is great looking, very detailed. The cockpit looks great, and the Garmin avionics look to be mostly functional as well. Overall, a very nice looking implementation. Not that I know anything about choppers. I can say the same thing about gliders. No idea how to fly this DG Aviation DG101E Neo here, so it's a good thing that they included lessons for flying it. Would have been nice if they'd have added lessons for flying choppers as well. The DC-3 looks awesome, and I love the cockpit and all of the detail that went into it. Very, very nice. Now, I'm not sure what's up with the flight model for the DC-3, as when I tried to take off in it, I got it to rotate, and then about 300 feet up, it made an uncontrollable left turn and augered in. So I suspect this will take a bit of playing around with to get the feel for it. The Grumman Goose looks amazing. The cockpit is pretty sparsely populated. I was able to fly this with no issues whatsoever. Can't wait to try some aquatic landings and takeoffs with it. Reminds me of a mini World War II PBY. Speaking of sparse, the Ryan is the very definition of sparse. Lindbergh had to lighten the aircraft and dedicate a great deal of space to fuel to make his flight. It doesn't even have a windshield. It had a periscope that he would use to get a forward view. A very brave guy, in my opinion. The aircraft looks really nice. I was able to fly it with ease. It was pretty sluggish and slow to respond to inputs, much the same as the Jenny. Okay, the last aircraft I'll look at here is the Spruce Goose. This thing is gigantic. I had to start with a flight in the air. The cockpit sports a typical six-pack along with some other ancillary gauges and controls for the multi-engine setup. In the back is room for cargo and passengers. It was super easy to fly. Very, very smooth. Overall, a great patch for me. I'd love to hear about how it went for you in the comments. Okay, that's it for this not-so-brief video. If you liked the video, please hit like, as that helps other folks find it. Until the next video, take care.